Hey everyone, welcome back to another history video. Today I'll be telling you the story of the Class 86, so let's get into it. During the late 1950s and early 1960s, BI had a scheme to electrify the West Coast Main Line from London to Crewe, Birmingham, Liverpool and Manchester. At the time, BI commissioned 4 companies to produce an AC locomotive that was capable of 100 mph running and classified AL1 to AL4, with 100 total units built. The Class 81, or AL1, was produced by the Birmingham Railway Carriage and Wagon Company. It has a power output of 3,150 horsepower and a top speed of 100 mph. 25 were ordered, 23 Type A for passenger service and 2 Type B for freight use. The Class 82, or AL2, was produced by Bayer Peacocks at the Gorton Works. It has a power output of 3,300 horsepower and a top speed of 100 mph. 10 units were ordered. Number 3, the Class 83, or AL3, was produced by English Electric at the Vulcan Foundry. It has a power output of 2,950 horsepower and a top speed of 100 mph. 15 units were ordered, 12 Type A and 3 Type B. The Class 84, or AL4, was produced by the North British Locomotive Company. It has a power output of 3,000 horsepower and a top speed of 100 mph. 10 units were ordered. The final first generation AC locomotive type was built by British Rail themselves at the Doncaster Works. The AL5s have a power output of 3,200 horsepower and a top speed of 100 mph. 40 units were ordered. Following the first 5 prototype locomotives, BR designed a new locomotive that will be the new face of services along the West Coast Main Line in freight or passenger workings. The AL6, as it will be classified, used the same design body, bogie design and cab design. A lot of changes were made to the design of the AL6 too. Most notably, changes from the prototype to the AL6 were a squarer cab, longer body, 1 pantograph, and different traction motor placement, among others. 100 units will be ordered, and the production will be split. English Electric building 60 locomotives, while BR's Doncaster Works will build 40, with early versions of AL6 having a diamond-style pantograph. Within 2 years of development, the first AL6 entered service in 1965, specifically August. All remaining AL6s were delivered in 1966 or 1967. The first AL6s were very common to rough riding and for causing track damage, along with the traction motor placement. The damage was being caused during high-speed running, notably speeds above 90 mph. In 1967, in an attempt to fix the issues, E3173, later 86204, the unit had been fitted with flexi-coil springs. The trial was carried out by the BR Research Division. With notable improvements, the new suspension was added to the first batch of AL6s and then gradually to the remainder of the fleet. From 1971, a renumbering scheme had taken place of 2 new subclasses. The -0 subclass, which was 86001 to 86048, which was as built condition but had their top speed reduced from 100 mph to 80 mph, and a -2 subclass, which was 86204 to 86252, which still had the 100 mph top speed. Not long after, another batch of Class 86s were modified and were for the units from the 86040 to 86048 range, which were renumbered from the 86253 to 86261 range. During the time of the modifications, the same unit, E3173, was fitted with a streamlined nose. This nose was added to experiment with aerodynamics and with high-speed testing. This experiment was for the APT and also the Class 43s. E3173 was tested with the nose cone and string on the West Coast Main Line. During its test, it had a recorded top speed of 129 mph, which was the first locomotive in Britain to beat Mallard's record. Also, the TOPS classification system was brought in to simplify the classes of locomotives and multiple units. In March 1970, BR announced further electrification of the West Coast Main Line to Preston, Carlisle and Glasgow Central. There was a need for further AC locomotives down the northern section of the West Coast Main Line. They decided to withdraw 3 Class 86s, 86201, 86202, 86203, were withdrawn from service to be converted to 5,000 horsepower test-bed locomotives. These locos were for the final development of the Class 87, which would be the final AC locomotive with the original design back from the late 1950s. The test-bed 86-2s renumbered from 86201, 86202, and 86203 to 86101, 86102, and 86103. The locos would see refitted BP9 bogies. Since the 86-1s have 5,000 horsepower, these locomotives have a top speed of 110 mph, which would be around the fastest speed of any locomotive on the West Coast Main Line. Around 1978, BR needed more locomotives capable of 100 mph top speed. BR used 1986-0s, which were modified to have SAB resilient wheels, which are of a new design and allocated the locomotives to finally be able to run at 100 mph top speed since the original modifications. The converted 86s were from the 86-011 range to 86-029, and renumbered to the new 86-3 subclass. The new numbers were 86-311 to 86-329. BR found that the new wheels did not prevent more track damage, so that's when modern modifications came in with the flexi-coil springs. These were applied to the remaining 86-0s and renumbered not in the -3 subclass, but the -4 subclass, which allowed BR to have a standardized fleet which was capable of 100 mph. Now, jumping over to the Great Eastern Mainline electrification, which was extended to its terminus at Norwich, so the Class 86-2s on this roll with Mark II coaches. The West Anglia Mainline was also electrified from Bishop Stortford to Cambridge. Class 86s would also hold trains on that line from 1987 to 1989. BR had fitted push-pull technology to the Class 86-2s and -4 fleets, which enabled them to work in push-pull workings with driving brake standard opens on the Great Eastern Mainline and with the new Mark III DVTs on the West Coast Mainline. Prior to the electrification, sectorization happened in 1982, with the Class 86 fleet split up. The 86-2s were handed to Intercity and the 86-4s to freight and parcels traffic. Many of the 86 fleet had train heating isolated and re-geared to a top speed of 75 mph. These new 86s will be converted to the 86-6 subclass. 8 86-2s were marked to have the same changes as the previous 86s, but reclassified to the 86-5s. Intercity wanted locomotives back, so the conversions were reverted. On the 10th of May 1992, 6 86-6s were returned to parcels workings, and were renumbered to the 86-4 subclass. Intercity also unveiled their new executive livery, which featured the red and white lines across the locomotive and had yellow cab ends. Intercity found a new livery and quickly applied it to its coaching stock, Class 43s, 91s, 90s, 87s and 86s, and other diesel and electric locomotives. This new livery will be called Intercity Swallow. At this point in time, 86-4s used on express passenger workings, parcels, speedlink and freight. Intercity had another livery called the Mainline livery, which was applied to the 86-4s and had an all-yellow front end, and was pretty similar to the Swallow livery too. Rail Freight Distribution unveiled the two-tone grey livery in 1987. 4 Class 86s received Rail Freight General logos from June 1998. Class 86-6s used the Rail Freight Distribution livery, but when parcel working 86s received the livery, it was just an upper layer black and lower layer red. But the parcel sector rebranded to Rail Express Systems, so the 86s had a revised red and black livery. Now on to privatisation. Virgin won the bid to run the CrossCountry and West Coast franchises, which are the last two passenger operators of the Class 86 besides Anglia Railways. First, let's cover Virgin West Coast, then CrossCountry. So, Virgin inherited 13 Class 86s, along with Class 87s, 90s, with Mark II and 3 coaches, mainly on service to Liverpool, Birmingham, Manchester, Wolverhampton, Carlisle and Glasgow. 1998 saw 86-229, the first 86 to be painted in the Virgin red and black livery. In 2001, all 86s were in the new livery except one. Virgin had reduced the fleet by 4 locomotives, now just sitting at 9. 86-209 was transferred to Anglia Railways, along with 86-101, 86-102 and 213 withdrawn from service. Virgin West Coast fleet contained celebrity locomotives, one of them which including 86-245 Caledonian, which had the standard Virgin livery except the red middle layer was replaced with the Caledonian Railway blue, to commemorate the company's 150th anniversary. In 2002, 86-233 was painted into the electric blue livery to commemorate the last 3 months the fleet had in service. 86-228 was also kept in the Intercity Swallow livery. By mid-2003, the Class 390 cleared off the remaining local hauled services. These were more up-to-date compared to the Mark IIIs and electric locomotives they are replacing. Virgin removed the last of the 86s, the units being 86-229, 86-233 and 86-247 in September 2003. The service was hauled by 86-233. Virgin also sent over to Anglia Railways 86-260 and to FM Rail 86-212, 86-229 and 86-233. Now for Virgin CrossCountry. Virgin CrossCountry inherited 19 locomotives. Their services were the exact same, except the addition of Edinburgh and Birmingham International and started at Preston. While at the stations north, the Class 86 will be replaced by Class 47, to head southwest to Reading, Bristol, Brighton, Poole, Weymouth and Penzance. Same time with Virgin West Coast 86s, Virgin CrossCountry sent their respective fleet of 86s to be painted into the new livery. When Virgin West Coast ordered Class 390s to take over the West Coast Main Line, CrossCountry ordered diesel equivalents, the 4-car Class 220 and the 5-car Class 221, both having top speeds of 125 miles per hour. Virgin CrossCountry started to withdraw the old attraction, notably the 86s. Virgin CrossCountry sent 86234 and 86242 to Anglia Railways, but most stayed in service until September 2002, when the entire 86 fleet was withdrawn. Prior, Virgin CrossCountry repainted 86253 in the Intercity Swallow livery to commemorate its final months in service. The final Virgin CrossCountry service with the Class 86 was used by Virgin West Coast 86233. Since withdrawn, the 86s have either been sent to Anglia Railways, scrapped, or sent to FM Rail or Network Rail. Virgin kept 86249 for a driver training vehicle at Polmaid Depot in Glasgow. Now, for the last passenger operator of the 86. Anglia Railways, which was awarded the Intercity Anglia franchise, inherited 15 86-2s. Anglia Railways also inherited Mark II coaches, as well as DBSOs for bushpool services and a few Mark III buffet cars. Since Anglia Railways depot was at Norwich Crown Point, the locomotives were placed at the London end of the train to make easy transfer to the depot. In 1998, 1 year after Anglia won the franchise, they introduced a new turquoise livery with white lines going across the locomotive and coaching stock. 5 Class 86s were withdrawn from 2002 onwards, numbers 86220, 86252, 86221, 86237, and 86257. 86252 was scrapped due to catching fire near Colchester. 86257 was withdrawn due to the state of the locomotive. 86220, 86221, and 86237 were withdrawn due to transformer failures. Luckily, Virgin CrossCountry sent over their redundant 86s to replace the Anglia ones. 86227 was reinstated to all trains after being in storage. 86227 would also carry the name Golden Jubilee, and painted with a Union flag on the side. Anglia found unreliability with their set of 86s, so they leased Class 90s from Freightliner, which helped reliability somewhat. 1 year after the lease, Anglia switched to using EWS owned Class 90s. EWS was able to lease 5 Class 90s at one time. Slowly, reliability improved. Like with 86220, 86246 suffered from transformer failures, but was able to be repaired. April 2004 saw the end of Anglia Railways, along with First Great Eastern and West Anglia Great Northern. The three franchises will be merged together, except the Great Northern part of West Anglia Great Northern. National Express won the new Greater Anglia franchise, and initially operating under One Anglia. One would also see the introduction of Class 90s, Mark III coaches, and DVTs from Virgin trains. On the first day of the new franchise, One had painted 2 Class 90s into the new livery to announce the new franchise. Despite full Class 90 introduction, A6235 was gone under an overhaul. A6235 was among the last 86s to receive repairs. One retained the entire 86 fleet in case of the 90s having reliability problems. In October 2004, only 6 86s were retained, these being A6218, A6232, A6234, and 86235, along with 86246 and 86260. The other units were withdrawn. 3 86s were sold to FM Rail, the units being 86217, 86223, and 86250. By December, only 2 locomotives were operational, those being 86235 Crown Point and 86246 Royal Anglian Raymond. One hoped to retire the remaining 2 86s by the end of 2004, but Class 90s were plagued with unreliability. So at the end, 86232 was repaired to displace 86246, which suffered from failures. The 86 fleet grew by 1 loco, 86234, which was repaired and returned to passenger service, but it was eventually stored in 2005. 86232 and 86235 were on the occasional passenger service when the Class 90s were plagued with more issues. Around June 2005, 86232 was out of use, and 86235 was operational but not used. The final service with the class being on September 17, 2005, when 86235 was excessively used in Norwich to London journeys to mark its retirement. This brought down the curtain on 40 years of Class 86 whole passenger services. Now onto some freight operators and some low-end operations, starting with EWS.
「
English, Welsh and Scottish Railways inherited 15 86s when it bought Rail Express systems, which controlled mail by rail. EWS used the 86s on mail trains from King's Cross to Newcastle and from Birmingham to Glasgow. One locomotive, 86239 LS Lowry, which was destroyed due to an accident at Stafford in 1996. EWS started to hire its 86 fleet for charters and mixed traffic duties and to help Virgin with this fleet. Only 3 locos were ever painted in EWS livery, the units being 86261, 86401 and 86426. EWS ordered a fleet of Class 67s to work on mail trains, replacing 86s, and a few Class 90s too. Virgin continued to press on with their lease with EWS for its Class 86s, but slowly replaced by Class 390s. By the end of 2002, EWS's fleet were tired. The fleet suffered from lots of failures and in poor condition. The last locomotives were 86210, 86401 and 86424. Freightliner had recently had a fire with 9150, also known as 90050, with it being written off due to fire damage. Freightliner reinstated the withdrawn 86s from English, Welsh and Scottish, the units being 86426 and 86430. These were on a long-term contract. Both 86s were repainted into Freightliner's racing green livery, and it was used on intermodal traffic like so with Freightliner's previously owned 86s. Freightliner ended the lease in 2004, with them having been delivered extra Class 66s from EMD. EWS advertised all its extra locomotives for sale. Majority were sold as scrap, but 86401 was preserved. 86210 and 86424 were being used by Network Rail and reclassified to the 86/9 range. EWS's 86 that were not leased by Freightliner were sold to CF Booth in 2005. Now with Freightliner. Freightliner inherited 30 Class 86/6s, which were exclusively freight locomotives. Before Freightliner inherited the locomotives, they ran under Rail Freight Distribution, along with a few from Rail Express systems. In 1995, Freightliner applied the logo onto the 86s. Originally, Freightliner used the 86s on the northern section of the West Coast Main Line from Crewe to Coatbridge. Trains working this route were doubled. The class also used on service from Crewe to Tilbury and Ipswich, where Freightliner had a large siding for storing locomotives. The routes normally go to Felixstowe, but since there are no wires, the 86s ran half the route electrified, while a 66, or at the time a Class 47, were coupled to the freight and hauled to Felixstowe. The 86s were also used on the East Coast Main Line when the service is diverted. Freightliner had some Class 47s inherited from British Rail, so they were converted to Class 57s, which also introduced a new green livery with yellow cab ends. 86631 was the first unit to be painted into this livery. Freightliner re-geared 86608 to allow it to run trains by itself, as reclassified 86501. Freightliner saw success in re-gearing the 86, but in the end, no further locomotives were re-geared. In 2004, 86501 suffered from fire damage and was repaired and sent back to service. 86501 was involved in another fire in August 2008 near Bletchley. It was again repaired. Freightliner also hired the development Class 87 test beds, those being 86101 and 86102. Following the end of Class 86 operations with Virgin, EWS, Anglia Railways and One, Freightliner became the last operator of the locomotive. Freightliner had 22 operational units with lots and more in warm storage, in operational condition. However, Freightliner in recent times has started en masse withdrawing Class 86s due to an influx of Class 66s. 86611 and 631 were also written off for a crash in Norton Bridge. 86615, 86620 and 621 were withdrawn following fire damage and eventually scrapped. Freightliner's Class 90 fleet were hired to Virgin and Anglia Railways. All have since returned, making the 86s out of use for service, but Freightliner since have kept 16 86s, and 2 of those being painted in the Power Hall livery, those being 86622 and 86637. Since 2020, Greater Anglia have retired their Class 90s, making the 86s redundant. Express Services purchased all remaining Freightliner units and exported them to Bulgaria. Collis Rail also had 86701 join the fleet in October 2012. It was only used for about 4 months when in January 2013 it went out of use. In 2015 it was used around Ilford Depot, and by March of 2016 it was transferred to Europhoenix, which when it got exported to Bulgaria. On March 31st, 2015, a new Caledonian sleeper contract started. It was previously ran by DB. In February 2015, 86101 was painted into the new livery and contracted to the service it was previously preserved by the AC Locomotive Group. 86101 was used on ECS duties from Euston to Wembley and Glasgow to Polmade, along with 87002. After restoration, 86401 joined the Caledonian Sleeper Fleet in August 2015. In October 2019, 86101 and 86401 were withdrawn due to coupler incompatibility and returned back to preservation. In 2004, Network Rail acquired 3 locomotives, being 86210, 86253 and 86424. The first 2 units were converted to mobile load banks testing locomotives, with 86424 used for spares. 86210 and 86253 were reclassified as 86-9 and renumbered to 86901 and 86902 respectively. The locomotives were formerly based at Rugby but moved and stored at Derby and wore the Network Rail yellow livery. The main use for the unit was for overhead line supply. When testing this, the 86s would be hauled by a diesel locomotive. Since the start of 2014, 86901 would be sent for dismantling. 86902 was scrapped and collected for spares for the new 86s by Floyd in Hungary. 86424 was exported and returned into service in 2018. Now the last operator, Hull Trains. Hull Trains was able to charter 86101 between January and April 2008 to provide a stopgap for its Class 222 Pioneer diesel-electric multiple units. It was used on London to Doncaster in January 2008. In the background, Hull Trains was testing and training the Class 180s for service, and 86101 operations came to an end on the 20th of April 2008. So I bet you're asking yourself, where are these locomotives today? From privatisation, 3 Class 86s have been preserved, the units being 86101, 86259 and 86401. So starting with 86101, 86101 used to be 86201 or E3191. In the 1970s, it was used as a test bed locomotive for the Class 87 and hasn't changed since withdrawal. 86101 currently is owned by Locomotive Services Limited, along with 87002, 90001 and 90002. 86259 or E3137 was preserved after withdrawal. It was bought out privately by Les Ross and has been preserved to this day. On to the last 86, 86401. Was preserved because it was the only member of the class to ever wore the Network Southeast livery. It is currently with West Coast Railways. In the end, 60 years after the first Class 86 service, and over overcoming its flaws and bumpy career, it has certainly redeemed itself, and with more than 1/3 of the fleet still in operation in Hungary, Bulgaria and in the UK, this proves the robust design and truly is an icon of the railways. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you like more of this, stay tuned for more, because I'm going to be planning to make a lot more of these. So hope you enjoyed and have a good day. Thank you and goodbye.